are the instigators of the violence and the looting? If they're organized or loosely organized, is there a way you can tell us who they are, or is there a prohibition against that because you may have had their organizations penetrated? And the second question is, do you expect the National Guard to be activated, and do you need their help, their numbers?
Thank you, Rich. No, we do not need, nor do we think it's wise for the National Guard to be in New York City, nor any armed forces. I'm going to tell you why. This is really important we have this out right now. If someone needs a history lesson, when outside armed forces go into communities, no good comes of it. We have seen this for decades, go back to the 50s, 60s with the civil rights movement on through, all the way up to today. People who are not trained for the conditions of New York City, they're public servants. They protect us in a different way. I appreciate them deeply, but they're not trained for the circumstance here. They have not been spending decades working on the relationship between police and community, particularly in the intensive way it's been worked on in recent years. Every officer out there, and some of them are imperfect because we're all human beings, but the vast majority are doing their job, doing it well, doing it with restraint because they've been trained incessantly to act with restraint. A National Guard, a member of the Guard called up from any part of this state, doesn't have that particular training, doesn't know our environment, but is carrying a loaded weapon. That is a bad scenario. So far, thank God we have not had a loss of life in these last 5 days. But you bring outside armed forces into an equation that they are not trained for, people who could be very, very unnerved by the dynamics that our police officers have learned to work with and deal with, that is a dangerous scenario. So I want to just put down the marker. The National Guard should not be brought here. We have 36,000 police officers. They are the best equipped to deal with this situation. And you know what will help them deal with the situation? Not the National Guard. The people of New York City are much more powerful than anything the National Guard could do. The true, authentic leaders of communities, members of the clergy, come out now. I'm calling you out. Civic leaders, block associations, come out now and stand up for peace, stand up against anyone who would do looting, stand up against anyone who would attack a police officer. I know our communities. I know how many good people there are. I know how many stakeholders there are who will not accept this violence. But they now need to come to the fore. I've said about the Cure Violence movement, crucial piece of the equation. Come to the fore. Stand up. Come to the fore. Do not let looters, and there are not that many in the scheme of a city of 8 million people. Do not let criminals, do not let gang members, do not let anarchists get to call the shots. It's your community, you call the shots. So, Rich, I've given you my answer on the National Guard. In terms of who's instigating, we see a pattern all over the country. There is a group of people, in some cases from outside the city, in some cases inside, but we're seeing the same pattern in a number of cities, a mix of people in that city and outside. To some extent organized, to some extent trained or sharing protocols, negative, violent protocols for how to create mayhem, how to create chaos, how to get it on video, how to attack police officers. We're seeing such a clear pattern. Anyone who doesn't see that isn't looking very hard. So yeah, there is a pattern. I'm not saying about you, Rich. I'm just saying in general. Anyone wants to deny a pattern we're seeing over and over and over again, give me a break. You're not trying if you can't see it. We're providing as much evidence as we can. I know Deputy Commissioner Miller did a briefing. I've asked him to keep doing briefings with the press. Every day he's got new information to try and show you the pattern. Obviously, what we can show, there may be some things we can't. It's clear there is an organized piece to this. Now, that's not the only thing going on, because last night in the Bronx, I think there were gang members. I don't know if they were organized by anyone but their own gang to do harm to their neighborhood. We see people just common criminals. Yes, that exists in our society. Some people are just career criminals. We saw some of them out looting in Midtown. They are a small in number, but they made an impact, and we will not allow it. So there is a pattern. Our job, Rich, is to show you all the information we can show you to help people understand that pattern. But I'd say to anyone, if you see someone attempting to loot, you need to immediately get away from that and alert the police. If you see anybody in a protest trying to instigate violence, you need to report that person immediately and separate from that person. Rich, one more thing. We have been seeing that all over New York City, too. We have been seeing members of protests throwing violent people out of their protests. In fact, again, it will not be reported. I challenge any of you to report this. I'll be very interested to see if even a single one of you will take me up on it. There were peaceful protesters who rejected the violent elements and forced them out of protests. There were Cure Violence members who told folks who wanted to foment violence to get out of protests. There were elected officials and clergy who said to people, if you're going to protest in our community, it must be peaceful. If you attempt any violence, we will reject you. That is what was happening more and more on Sunday and Monday. That ultimately is the big story here. Community people taking back their own city.